I want you to picture a scenario. Have you ever spent hours, or maybe even days, pouring your absolute heart and soul into working on something only for it to end in a complete, unmitigated disaster?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. You know, the exact feeling. You invest all this time, all this energy, you build up your expectations, and then, well, the universe just pulls the rug right out from under you.
It's the worst.
It really is. Imagine you spend all day searching for a very specific outfit for an event. You walk from store to store, navigating crowds, your feet are aching. You finally spot it on the rack.
The relief.
Exactly, the relief. But then you wait in a massive line. You reach the counter, and the cashier politely informs you that it is completely sold out in your size.
Oh, that specific hollow flavor of defeat.
Yes, exactly that. And our mission for today's deep dive is to explore how the Japanese language actually has a dedicated grammatical tool built exclusively to capture that exact feeling.
It is a universally crushing experience. And what's fascinating here is that we are looking at something much more complex than a simple vocabulary word. The Japanese grammar point, known as Ageku, is often translated into English as, like, after all that effort or in the end.
Right.
But those translations barely scratch the surface of what the language is actually doing. We are dealing with a highly specialized linguistic tool that explicitly requires a history of struggle. You cannot use this structure for a neutral sequence of events.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because it is incredible how a language can take such a heavy, complex human emotion and, well, just bake it directly into the structural rules of how a sentence is put together.
It really shows that language isn't just a vehicle for conveying logistical information.
Right. It's designed to convey the exact shape and weight of our human experiences. But to understand how Ageku functions, we need to look at the strict logic of its architecture.
Yes, because you can't just slap this onto any random story you are telling. There is a very specific two-part formula at play here, starting with the setup.
Which leads us to the first requirement, the process.
Exactly. The architecture of an Ageku sentence is split into two distinct halves, and both halves have absolute, non-negotiable requirements. The first half is all about that process.
So you can't just say, I walked to the store and they were closed.
No, not at all. For this grammar point to work, the process leading up to the conclusion must be long, it must be tiring, or it must involve significant, measurable effort. You are meticulously setting the stage of your own hardship.
And to really hammer home that feeling of exhaustion, Ageku is frequently paired with specific Japanese adverbs that do a lot of heavy lifting. Like words like sanzan, which translates to doing something thoroughly or even terribly.
Right, or iraro, meaning various things.
Yeah, so you aren't just telling your friend that you did a task, you are emphasizing the sheer volume of the exertion. You tried this method, you tried that method, you worked at it thoroughly until you were completely exhausted.
You are intentionally building up the stakes for the listener. By front-loading the sentence with words like sanzan, you are sending a clear signal.
Yeah.
You're saying, because I really tried my hardest here.
You're documenting your physical or mental exertion for the record.
Precisely. And that brings us to the second half of the equation, which is the result. The rule here is absolute and unforgiving. The result must be negative.
Okay, I want to push back on that for a second to really test the boundaries of this rule, because the English language handles this concept very differently.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Like, in English, we often use contrast to emphasize a glorious victory. Think about the classic sports movie trope.
The training montage.
Exactly. The hero trains for 10 hours a day, drinks raw eggs, runs upstairs in the freezing cold, puts in all this grueling effort, and then they win the championship.
Right.
We would say, after all that agonizing training, I finally won the gold. It highlights the triumph. So wait, what if I study for 10 hours and ace the test? Can I use Ageku to say, after all that studying, I got an A?
It is a completely logical question, especially coming from an English-speaking perspective, where effort is culturally framed as a stepping stone to success.
Yeah, hard work pays off.
But the grammar of Ageku categorically rejects that narrative. If you are happy with the result, if the grueling effort actually paid off and you won the championship or got the A+, you cannot use this structure.
Wow, really?
Really. The sentence would sound grammatically broken to a native speaker. It is reserved strictly, exclusively, for disappointing, frustrating endings.
So there's no silver lining?
None. If your hard work was rewarded, Japanese has completely different grammatical structures to express that. Ageku is, at its core, the grammar of the bad ending.
So this is basically the sunk cost fallacy turned into a grammar rule.
That is a perfect way to describe it. It is structurally engineered to only deliver bad news.
It's like a grammatical sigh of defeat. Think about a scenario where you were trying to navigate a new city.
Oh, that's a great example.
You're trying to find a specific restaurant, and you end up wandering through alleyways, crossing the same bridge 3 times, and asking locals for directions that you don't fully understand.
There's a perfect Japanese phrase from our source text that captures that exact scenario. Sanzan michi ni mayota ageku kikyoku ekimae ni madotta.
Which translates to, after getting hopelessly lost, I finally ended up back at the station where I started.
Yes.
You can practically feel the frustration vibrating in the architecture of that sentence. You have the sanzan, the thorough, terrible wandering.
Right, the massive effort.
And then you have the ageku, the pivot point where all that wasted effort tips over the edge. And then the punchline. You are standing right back where you started. You accomplished literally nothing but making your own feet hurt.
It highlights a brilliant contrast. The intense amount of physical movement, confusion, and active problem solving in the first half of the sentence is completely negated by the static, useless reality of the second half.
It's so tragic.
It really is. Ageku serves as the bridge between hope, the hope that you will eventually find your way, and the crushing reality of total failure.
Okay, so now that we understand the emotional requirements, you need a massive, exhausting struggle, and it absolutely has to end in a failure. We need to look at how this is applied mechanically.
Because we aren't just talking about a philosophical concept here.
Right. There are strict grammatical rules governing how you attach this to different types of words, specifically actions, which are verbs, versus events, which are nouns.
Yes, the mechanical application is quite precise, and it subtly reinforces the finality of the situation we've been discussing.
Okay, so how does it work for verbs?
When you're using a verb, an action you actively took, like walking, studying, or searching, you must conjugate that verb into its ta form before adding ageku.
And the ta form is the past tense, right?
Exactly. In Japanese, the ta form represents the past tense.
I see. So by forcing the verb into the past tense before you even get to the ageku part, the grammar is essentially locking the door behind you.
That's a great metaphor.
It is saying the action is over. The struggle is completely done. Do not hold out any hope for a last-minute save. The effort is permanently locked in the past.
Precisely. It seals the action away in history. You cannot use a present or future tense verb before ageku because the effort has to be a completed historical fact for the subsequent disappointment to properly land.
You can't be in the middle of trying.
No, you have to be finished trying and you have to have failed.
Brutal. And what about nouns?
Now for nouns, which represent overarching events or concepts rather than specific actions, the rule is slightly different, but even simpler. You just attach the particle no before ageku.
So it is noun plus no plus ageku.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because you can apply this highly dramatic, tragic grammar to the most everyday, mundane, soul-crushing events of modern life.
Oh, yes.
Think about the universal experience of the pointless corporate meeting. You know the ones.
We all know the ones.
Right. You are sitting in a conference room under buzzing fluorescent lights. You debate for hours. Someone draws a complex matrix on the whiteboard. You weigh the pros and cons. People argue. People aggressively agree with each other.
It is a remarkably relatable scenario that crosses all cultural boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And in Japanese, you would frame that bureaucratic nightmare by saying, Nageijiro no Ageku, ketsuron wa saki no shiri ni sareta.
After a long discussion, the conclusion was postponed. Oh man, the pain of that sentence is so real.
It is visceral.
So, nageijiren is the noun phrase, a long discussion. Then we get the no ageku, after all that effort and time. And the result, we decided to decide later.
All that intellectual and social effort, and someone just looks at the clock and says, let's table this for next quarter.
It perfectly encapsulates a very specific type of corporate fatigue.
And I think what is so striking here is the versatility of the tool. We went from the literal, physical frustration of wandering lost in the streets to the abstract, bureaucratic frustration of a useless corporate meeting.
Yeah, that's a huge leap.
It demonstrates that ageku is not bound by a specific category of struggle. It is bound entirely by the geometry of the struggle.
Sure.
High effort leading to zero reward.
That geometry is everywhere once you start looking for it. It shows that all for nothing is an incredibly universal human experience, regardless of whether you are in a boardroom or an alleyway.
Absolutely.
And applying this to modern, everyday headaches really solidifies how it functions in daily storytelling. Going back to our earlier example about shopping, imagine the agony of trying to buy shoes.
The absolute agony.
You don't just walk into one store, you go to 3 different shops.
Yeah.
You try on different pairs, you walk around the little mirrors, you debate if they are too tight, you wonder if they match your wardrobe.
The Japanese phrasing for that specific modern tragedy is Sanken mo shopu omoate nanda ageku saizu ga nakute kainakatan desu.
After visiting 3 different shops and agonizing over it, I couldn't buy them because they didn't have my size.
Notice the structural layering in that sentence. Sanken pulling even as many as 3 shops. It emphasizes the physical toll of walking from place to place.
Right, the legwork.
Then we have nayanda, the past tense, or te form, of agonizing or worrying. That is the mental toll. You have the physical exhaustion and the mental exhaustion perfectly layered and locked into the past tense before we even reach the word ageku.
So you aren't just casually saying, I couldn't get the shoes.
No, you are practically demanding that the listener acknowledge the 3 separate stores you trudged to and the mental gymnastics you performed trying to justify the purchase before you reveal that the universe denied you anyway.
It is an incredibly efficient way to force someone to walk a mile in your shoes before you tell them you didn't even get to buy the shoes.
Exactly.
But honestly, as bad as the shopping scenario is, there is an even more visceral modern nightmare from the source text that perfectly aligns with this grammar: the digital disaster.
Ah, yes. The ultimate 21st century application of Ageku.
Imagine this. You spend 3 unbroken hours working on a massive spreadsheet or a crucial report.
Just typing away.
Right. You are meticulously fixing typos, aligning margins, doing complex formatting, doing whatever it takes to get this document perfect for a deadline. And then the screen freezes.
The worst.
The cursor stops blinking. You hit the escape key, nothing happens. You hit Control-Alt-Delete, nothing happens. You just sit there, staring at your own reflection in the dark monitor, realizing that the last 3 hours of your life are just gone.
In Japanese, you would express that quiet devastation by saying, Sanjikam kakete no shita jeku pasokanga furizu shaite kakichata. I spent 3 hours fixing it, and then my computer froze and the data disappeared.
It is the most universally defeating feeling. It is like the universe delivering a cruel punchline to a very long, very unfunny joke.
Surely.
3 hours of careful, tedious work completely erased in a microsecond.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are really observing with these examples is how Ageku functions as a masterful storytelling device. It is not just a grammatical rule to memorize. It is an entire narrative structure compressed into a single concept.
Like a microstory.
Exactly. Think about how a good joke, or conversely, a compelling tragedy, is written. You have to establish the stakes early on. You have to make the audience care about the effort being expended.
Right, you have to build it up.
And Ageku acts as the fulcrum in that miniature story. The first half meticulously builds up the tension and the investment. The speaker is essentially saying to their audience, look at how hard I tried. Look at the 3 hours I spent. Look at the 3 stores I visited.
It forces the listener to empathize with the struggle before they even know how the story ends.
It actively recruits the listener's empathy. And then, once that empathy is fully engaged and the listener is invested in your effort, the second half of the sentence deliberately undercuts it with a tragic finale.
Wow.
It is a linguistic mechanism designed specifically to complain with maximum narrative efficiency. You don't have to explain to your friend why you're so frustrated.
Yeah.
The grammar itself does the heavy lifting of framing your mundane Tuesday afternoon as a Greek tragedy.
That makes perfect sense, and it leads to such an interesting dynamic between the speaker and the listener. Well, you are packaging your everyday misery into this neat little grammatical box that everyone in your culture immediately understands. You say Ageku, and the listener instantly knows the geometry of the story. They think, oh boy, here comes the bad news. All that work was for nothing.
Yes. It creates a shared expectation. The moment the listener hears that word, they are bracing for the impact of the failure right alongside you. They are mentally preparing to commiserate.
It's a completely shared cultural shorthand for disappointment. So what does this all mean? Let's distill the key takeaways from our deep dive today so you, the listener, can fully grasp the mechanics of this beautifully tragic grammar point. We have 3 main rules to remember if you want to understand how this works.
Okay.
Rule number 1, the process matters immensely. You cannot use Ageku for a minor inconvenience that took 5 seconds. It must be used when the process leading up to the failure was long, difficult, or involved a lot of agonizing effort. You need that documented history of struggle.
The effort is the absolute prerequisite for the disappointment. Without the struggle, the grammar falls apart.
Right. Rule number 2, The result is always bad. It is strictly reserved for those all-for-nothing moments. If you win the race, if you pass the test, if you finally get the promotion after years of hard work, Ageku stays firmly on the shelf.
Exactly.
It is a tool specifically built for failure, frustration, and anticlimaxes.
It is the grammar of the sunk cost fallacy realized and spoken aloud.
And finally, rule number 3 covers the mechanical application. If you are using a verb, an action that you took, you must use the te form, the past tense, to signify that the effort is completely over, done with, and locked in the past.
And if you were using a noun, an event like a long discussion or a massive project, you simply attach the particle no before adding Ageku.
Te form for verbs, noun plus no. It is a strict but beautifully simple formula designed to frame the chaos of daily life.
It really is.
So to you, the listener, the next time you find yourself entirely defeated by a situation, the next time you put your heart into organizing a project only for the client to cancel it at the last minute.
Or you spend all Sunday afternoon cooking an intricate meal and immediately drop the entire pan on the kitchen floor.
Oh, the worst. Just remember this rule. Save this conceptual structure exclusively for your most frustrating stories.
But think about the implication of having this tool at your disposal. This raises an important question that isn't explicitly laid out in the grammar books, but feels like the natural conclusion to everything we've explored today.
Okay, I'm listening.
Does having a dedicated, highly structured grammatical framework for frustrated effort actually act as a psychological coping mechanism?
Oh, wow. That's a fascinating thought.
Think about how it feels when we experience these senseless, infuriating failures, like losing 3 hours of data to a frozen screen or getting hopelessly lost in the rain. In the moment, it feels random, chaotic, and deeply overwhelming. But by forcing those messy, annoying, everyday disasters into the neat, predictable, culturally understood formula of Ageku, do we somehow gain a sense of control over them? By framing our pain through this specific linguistic lens where the listener already knows the punchline is going to be tragic, do we make those all-for-nothing moments just a little bit easier to bear because we are sharing the weight of them in a structured way?
I love that perspective. It's the idea that the universe might have completely ruined my afternoon, but at least I have the absolute perfect grammatical structure to tell you exactly how bad it was.
Exactly.
It turns the senseless chaos of a bad day into a highly structured, relatable story. So, as you go about your week, we leave you to ponder your own moments of wasted effort through this linguistic lens.
Absolutely.
The next time you spend hours searching for that perfect item or wrestling with a frozen computer only for it to end in a complete, unmitigated disaster, you'll know exactly how to frame it.